My name is Jasmine Steele, 32 years old, a former soldier who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, where I learned that life can hang by a single breath. I'm not one for storytelling, but this tale needs to be told, not to boast, but to show you what happens when your own family turns against you, trying to erase your very existence. I sat in a polished conference room, watching my father burn a $50 million check my grandfather left me. I didn't scream or cry. I just smiled. Not because I'm crazy, but because I held something no flame could destroy. If you've ever been betrayed by family, felt your name scratched out of life's ledger, this story is for you. Sit down, listen, and if it hits home, share it. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Let's start from the beginning. Chapter 1: The Will Reading. I walked into the conference room of Hamilton & Price, a law firm where the gleaming wooden floors reflected the chandelier's light, reminding me this wasn't a place for a battle-worn veteran like me, more accustomed to desert dust and gunpowder than polished oak. I hadn't seen my father, Robert Steele, in nearly 6 years. He sat at the head of the table, his eyes piercing me like I was an intruder, not his daughter. My sister, Abigail Steele, 35, was already seated, legs crossed, wearing her signature smug smile as if she'd just won a lawsuit without breaking a sweat. The lawyer, Eleanor Price, a silver-haired woman in her 60s, nodded at me. She'd been with our family since I was a kid, back when people still pretended I belonged. No one said hello. No hugs, no questions about my last deployment or whether I'd come back whole. I didn't expect warmth. I was there only because of a promise to my grandfather, Henry Steele, the one person who truly saw me. Eleanor began reading the will, her voice steady, like she was reciting instructions for assembling furniture. Abigail inherited the Crystal Lake estate and a vintage piano. My father got a collection of rare Mark Twain books and a $15,000 donation to the American Ethics Council in his name. He snorted, as if it were a bad joke. Then Eleanor turned to me. To Jasmine Steele, my granddaughter, my sole confidant, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all financial holdings, real estate, and control of Steele Dynamics. Silence. Abigail froze, her smile cracking. My father's jaw tightened like he was grinding down rage. Eleanor slid a check across the table. $50,246,000, clean, signed, dated. Before I could touch it, my father lunged, snatching the check like it had personally insulted him. "You think this brings you back?" he growled. Right there, in front of Eleanor and Abigail, he flicked a lighter and set the check ablaze. The flames devoured my grandfather's signature, turning it to ash. Abigail gasped. Eleanor leaned back, unfazed, as if she'd seen men torch fortunes before. My father glared at me, his voice ice cold. "That's what you get for walking away." I didn't flinch. I smiled, not a happy smile, but the kind you wear when you know the ending before anyone else. 'Cause inside my coat pocket was another envelope, one my grandfather gave me a month before he died, wrapped in a napkin like a sacred relic. "Don't open it unless they try to burn it," he'd said. And they did. But I didn't open it yet. I sat there in that sterile room filled with fake grief and raw anger, while my father accused Eleanor of forging the will and Abigail demanded a second reading. I listened, hands in my lap, feeling the heat of the fire fade from the table. Chapter 2: Grandfather's Secret. I'm not one for theatrics, but I know how to stay silent. That's a lesson from Kandahar, where you learn to become invisible to survive. Leaving the meeting, I said nothing, letting the sound of my boots on the polished floor speak for me. Courthouse parking lot was half empty, with a leaning oak tree I used to climb as a kid, before my father told me girls didn't belong in trees. That was the first time I thought I might not belong anywhere. Driving back to my small apartment, I kept the radio off. Just the hum of the engine and my heartbeat trying to outrun my thoughts. My grandfather's envelope sat on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. I didn't open it right away. Instead, I poured a glass of water and stood in my kitchen, staring out at a street I didn't love but never left. The weight of the will, the fire, and my family's silence pressed down like a shadow. I remembered coming home from Syria after 18 months of convoy defense. I'd seen friends bleed out in the sand, buried a journal under rubble after a roadside bomb exploded 2 feet from my tent. My right ear still rang from it. But when I returned for Thanksgiving, my father only said, "You didn't write." No welcome, no relief that I'd survived. My room was gone, desk, bed, bookshelf, all my letters and photos vanished. In their place were 2 beige armchairs and a framed quote about calm waters. Abigail passed me in the hall with a steaming mug of peppermint tea, smirking. "Don't be dramatic, you were gone for like a year and a half." I left that day, renting a cheap apartment off the highway and working part-time security at a warehouse while waiting for the VA to process my paperwork. Every few weeks, a wire transfer came from H. Steele, no note, just enough to keep the lights on and gas in the tank. I knew it was my grandfather. He didn't say much, but he saw me, like when he showed up with perfectly fitted boots for junior ROTC when I was 12. When my father called the military a dead end, Grandpa smirked. "Maybe that's why your board meetings feel like war zones." When he got sick, I visited him at Hilltop Diner. He was thinner, quieter, but his eyes were still sharp. Over lukewarm coffee and lemon pie, he handed me the envelope. "Don't open it unless they try to erase you," he said. I thought he was being dramatic. But that night in my dim kitchen, I opened it. Inside was a notarized trust transfer form and a USB. The form showed the money had already been moved, not the check my father burned. The USB held bank records, company control transfers, and a draft of a second will. The account number ended with my grandfather's birthday reversed. He knew I'd remember. Chapter 3: The System Called Me Dead. Relief lasted 5 minutes. When I logged into my bank app, it errored, "Account not found." I tried again, slower, as if precision could fix it. Nothing. I called customer service, and a board guy named Dylan answered. After checking, he said, "Your account's marked inactive." Deceased, actually. I hung up before my voice broke. I went to the DMV, waiting behind a woman arguing over a 2010 parking ticket. When my turn came, the clerk looked at my ID, frowned, and said, "You're flagged as legally deceased." I wanted to punch a window but asked, "How long to fix this?" "Could be months," she replied. I walked out, feeling like a ghost. The system had erased me, and someone had orchestrated it. On my way home, I saw a woman standing under bare trees, wearing oversized sunglasses and a blue silk scarf, my mother's scarf, the one she said the dry cleaner lost 3 years ago. She didn't wave, just stood there, a silent threat. I crossed the street, but when I reached the other side, she was gone. No footsteps, no trace. Chapter 4: Hidden Treasure. I dug through my grandfather's old letters and found a brass key wrapped in a faded handkerchief, labeled Langford, Box 17. He'd given it to me on my 18th birthday, saying, "You'll need this someday." I threw on a hoodie, grabbed the key, and drove to Langford Storage, a rundown building with no sign, just a blinking red camera. A woman in her 50s, no smile, opened the door and led me down a cold hallway. Box 17 held a fireproof folder and a manila envelope. I opened them on the floor. Inside was a new certified check, $50 million with shimmering security features. A red label read, "Non-negotiable copy burned." The manila envelope had a note in my grandfather's handwriting. "Trust no one, not even her." No name, but I knew Abigail. contained emails, handwritten notes, and legal drafts documenting every conversation with his lawyer, every asset transfer, and Steele Dynamics board agendas for the past year. Abigail's name appeared on meeting minutes and contracts. At the bottom was a USB with a note, "Play once, alone." Back home, I locked the door, drew the blinds, and plugged in the USB. A video loaded, my grandfather in his sunroom, lights soft on his shoulder. "If you're seeing this, Jasmine, they did what I feared," he said, voice steady, no tremble. He described how they lied, dismissed my service, weaponized my absence. "I left it all to you, not just the money, but the company, the name, the foundation. You know what to do." He smiled barely. A woman with receipts is more dangerous than a man with money. Chapter 5, Starting the Fight. I called Abigail, now 35, marketing director at Steele Dynamics. She answered in a polished tone, like I was a difficult client. "I didn't sign anything," she said immediately. "Dad said it was a state protection insurance." I asked about the death certificate. She hesitated, admitting she'd seen it with my name on it. I hung up, needing no more words. I went to Sarah Mitchell, a 42-year-old lawyer who once sued the Pentagon and won. Her apartment was cluttered, stacked with legal files. She looked at me, handed me a slice of cold pizza, and said, "Eat, you look like a ghost with a grudge." I gave her the Langford folder. She flipped through, muttering, "They declared you dead through a Delaware shell company." Sloppy. She asked for my military records. I handed over deployment orders, discharge papers, and original signatures. Sarah introduced me to Daniel Crow, 38, a document analyst who spotted the forged signature on the stock transfer. "This is scanned from your 2017 discharge form," he said. "They sold 40% of your shares to your father's real estate trust." Sarah added, "This isn't just civil, it's federal fraud." Chapter 6, Courtroom Showdown. Sarah filed an injunction to freeze Steele Dynamics board actions. We had 11 days until the company's annual audit. I contacted Nathan Wilder, a 45-year-old investigative journalist who'd exposed a defense contractor bribery scandal. I laid out everything: fake death certificate, forged signatures, the asset grab. Nathan didn't blink, just took notes and said, "I heard Robert's prepping to take the company public. You can't do that with a $50 million transfer tied to a forged corpse." 2 days later, Nathan's article dropped. Daughter declared dead, cut from $50 million inheritance. The internet exploded. Former Steele Dynamics employees sent anonymous tips, including a fake consulting invoice signed by Abigail in my name. Robert went on TV trying to control the narrative, calling me mentally unstable. But he misstepped by attacking a veteran. Veterans and shareholders tore into him. In court, Judge Rebecca Kinley, 55, had no patience for theatrics. Sarah played my grandfather's video where he declared me the sole heir. Rebecca ruled me the legal heir, freezing all fraudulent transfers. Robert and Abigail left the courtroom, avoiding my gaze. Sarah whispered, "You just took the throne, Jasmine." Chapter 7, Final Meeting with Abigail. The Midtown Cafe was a sterile pocket of the city, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on the glass tabletops. I chose it deliberately, neutral ground, no memories to tug at my resolve. The air smelled of overbrewed coffee and the faint tang of cleaning solution, a place where people came to hide in plain sight, pretending to work on laptops while eavesdropping on lives not their own. I spotted Abigail before she saw me, sitting by the window, her posture rigid despite the casual sweater and jeans she'd chosen to soften her usual corporate polish. 2 coffees sat untouched on the table, steam long gone, as if she'd ordered them to buy time rather than to share. When her eyes met mine, she stood too quickly, knocking her chair back an inch. Her hands hovered, unsure whether to reach for a hug or brace for impact. I didn't give her the chance to decide. I slid into the seat across from her, setting my phone face down on the table, its recording app already running. Abigail's face was a map of contradictions. Her lips twitched toward a smile, but her eyes darted like a cornered animal's. 35, she looked older than I remembered, not in wrinkles but in the weight of her expression, as if the months of scheming had carved something permanent into her. I didn't speak, letting the silence stretch, a tactic I'd learned in interrogation training. Let the other person fill the void. She did. "Jasmine, I swear I didn't know about the death certificate," she blurted, her voice high and brittle, like glass about to crack. "Dad said it was just restructuring paperwork, some legal cleanup for the company. I thought it was routine." Her hands twisted the edge of her sweater, a nervous habit I hadn't seen since we were kids, when she'd fidget before confessing to breaking Mom's favorite vase. Back then, I'd taken the blame for her. Not anymore. I stared at her, my face a blank slate, though inside my pulse thrummed with a mix of anger and exhaustion. Her words felt rehearsed, a script she'd practiced in the mirror to absolve herself. "You signed my name, Abigail," I said, my voice low, steady, like I was giving orders in a sandstorm. "You didn't just sign a form. You signed me out of existence." Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for water. "I was scared," she whispered, her eyes dropping to the cold coffee. "Dad said if I didn't help, I'd lose everything, my position, the house, my future. He said you didn't want it, that you'd walked away for good." She looked up, pleading now, her green eyes wide with something that might have been regret but felt more like desperation. "I didn't think you'd fight, Jasmine. You always just left." The words stung, not because they were false, but because they carried a shard of truth. I had left after Syria, after the house no longer felt like home, after years of being told I didn't fit the Steele family mold. But leaving wasn't surrender, it was survival. "You watched him burn the check," I said, leaning forward, my voice cutting through the cafe's hum. "You stood there while he tried to erase me. And you didn't flinch." Abigail's hands shook as she gripped her coffee cup, the ceramic clinking against the saucer. "I was stupid," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting what was ours." "Ours never included me," I shot back, the words sharp enough to draw blood. "Not once, Abigail. You made that clear when you let him turn my room into a guest suite, when you smirked and told me not to be dramatic. You didn't just sign a form, you signed me off the map." Her eyes welled up, and she wiped at them with her coat cuff, smearing mascara. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said, almost a whisper. "I thought I was saving the family legacy." The word family landed like a stone in my chest. Family. The same family that had declared me dead to steal what was mine. I leaned back, letting the silence settle again, watching her unravel under its weight. "I'm not pressing charges," I said finally, my voice calm but unyielding. "You'll get whatever the law deems fair, but you don't get a seat at the table. Not in the company, not in my life." I stood, sliding my phone into my pocket, the recording still running. Abigail's face crumpled, but she didn't protest. "I'm still your sister," she said, her voice small, like a child reaching for something already gone. "And I was still alive," I replied. "That didn't seem to matter a few months ago." I walked out, leaving her with the cold coffee and her regrets. The door swung shut behind me, and the city's noise swallowed the moment. I didn't look back. Abigail wasn't my sister anymore. She was a ghost of a bond I'd buried long ago. Chapter 8: Building a Legacy. The $50 million wasn't just money, it was a mandate. My grandfather, Henry Steele, had entrusted me with more than wealth. He'd given me a mission to build something that could outlast the lies and betrayal. I founded the Steele Foundation in a modest office downtown, its walls bare except for a single corkboard where I pinned a photo of me and Grandpa at my 7th birthday. We wore matching paper crowns he'd crafted from wrapping paper, our smiles wide under the summer sun. His note, tucked in the envelope with the photo, read, "It takes more than fire to stop royalty." I didn't frame it. I used thumbtacks, letting its raw edges remind me of the work ahead. The Foundation's mission was clear: support female veterans navigating the chaos of post-service life. I named the flagship program Forward Haven, a training center to help women like me find solid ground after the military. I partnered with David Tran, a 40-year-old Kandahar veteran with a quiet intensity and a knack for seeing through bureaucratic nonsense. David had lost a leg to an IED, but never his resolve. When I pitched the idea over coffee at a diner, he leaned back, scratched his beard, and said, "You're not just building a program, Jasmine. You're building a lifeline." His words hit harder than I expected, stirring a mix of pride and fear that I might fail those who needed this most. Sarah Mitchell, the lawyer who'd fought my case, joined the board pro bono. 42, she was a force of nature, her sharp mind matched only by her disdain for corporate games. She saw the foundation as a way to keep fighting for those the system overlooked. Nathan Wilder, the journalist who'd broken the story of my family's fraud, spread the word through his network, his articles framing Forward Haven as a beacon for veterans. Daniel Crow, the document analyst, set up our data security, his meticulous nature ensuring no one could hack or sabotage what we were building. I trusted them, not because they were flawless, but because they'd stood by me when my own blood hadn't. The Foundation's first client was Tori, a 28-year-old veteran dishonorably discharged for reporting sexual harassment in her unit. Her letter arrived in a crumpled envelope, sent to an old P.O. box I'd nearly forgotten. She didn't ask for money, only for someone to listen. I called her that night and we talked for 2 hours, her voice cracking as she described being ostracized, her career torched for speaking truth. I saw myself in her, the isolation, the betrayal, the stubborn will to keep going. I labeled her file Client 01, not as a number but as a promise. She was the first but not the last. Every step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The Foundation wasn't just a project. It was a declaration that I was still here, still standing. But late at night, alone in my apartment, doubt crept in. Could I carry this? Was I enough? I'd stare at Grandpa's photo, his words echoing, "Royalty doesn't bow." I didn't want to be a queen, but I wanted to be unyielding, to build something that could withstand the fires others tried to set. Chapter 9, A New Beginning. The storefront I bought was a forgotten relic, squeezed between a florist and a shuttered laundromat, its tall windows scuffed and its floors creaking with neglect. It was the address my grandfather had marked in his final envelope, labeled "Start Here." Inside was a half-finished business plan in his meticulous handwriting, outlining a training center for women veterans transitioning to civilian life, career guidance, counseling, a place to rebuild. His note read, "Build what they can't erase." I spread the plan across the dusty floor, my fingers tracing his words, feeling the weight of his trust. Reviving my old LLC Steele Insight felt like dusting off a part of myself I'd buried. Company had been a fleeting dream 3 years ago, a vague idea of consulting that never took off. Now it was the foundation for something real. I filed permits, hired contractors, and chose paint colors, soft grays and blues, colors that felt like calm after a storm. The work wasn't glamorous. It was meetings with city officials, late nights balancing budgets, and mornings hauling boxes of supplies. But every nail driven into the walls felt like a stake in the ground, a claim to a future I controlled. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, I stood at the center's window, watching streetlights flicker to life. The glass was streaked, the floor still needed refinishing, but the space was mine. I wasn't a daughter trying to please a father, a soldier following orders, or a ghost haunting her own life. I was Jasmine Steele, building something untouchable. The realization didn't come with fanfare, just a quiet certainty, like the moment you know a wound has finally scarred over. I thought of Abigail, of the cafe, of her trembling hands. I didn't hate her, but I didn't need her. She'd chosen her side, and I'd chosen to move forward. The center, Forward Haven, was more than a building. It was a promise to women like Tori, like me, that the world couldn't erase us. I opened Grandpa's plan again, adding my own notes, mentorship programs, legal aid for discharge disputes, housing referrals. My handwriting didn't match his, but the mission did. I wasn't building out of anger or to prove a point. I was building so no one else would have to claw their way out of a grave their family dug. As I locked the door that night, the cold air bit at my knuckles, but I felt solid, grounded. The future wasn't a dream, it was in the permits, the paint cans, the first client file on my desk. I didn't need to reclaim the past, I was too busy shaping what came next. 5 lessons wrought from resilience. This tale isn't fueled by revenge. It's a powerful narrative of rising when others seek to obliterate your presence. I am Jasmine Steele, a woman tempered by the scorching flames of familial betrayal, the crushing realization of being legally erased by my own kin, and the fierce struggle to reclaim my identity. These trials have forged lessons that root me firmly, serving as both my compass and my strength. These aren't merely my personal epiphanies, they are lifelines cast out to anyone who has ever felt like a shadow, cast aside, or stifled by those they once held dear. I offer these 5 insights not as a lofty sermon, but as a bridge to those still wandering through their own darkness, seeking light. First, the truth stands unyielding. Lies can bellow with conviction, weaving intricate tapestries of manipulation that beguile the unwary, yet evidence remains an unstoppable force. When my father torched that $50 million check, he was convinced he could annihilate my grandfather's intentions. However, the weight of notarized documents, the authenticity of my signatures, and a poignant video from the one man who truly understood me towered above the inferno. Arm yourself with proof, cradle it with care, and unleash its voice when the hour strikes. The truth persists, outlasting even the most thunderous fabrications with a quiet, enduring power. Second, silence is a formidable tool. In the tempest of that while reading, I resisted the urge to shout or retaliate. I observed as my father and sister floundered, their accusations and justifications stacking like tinder waiting for a spark. Holding my peace wasn't a surrender, it was a tactical choice. My years in Kandahar instilled in me the discipline of patience, the wisdom of vigilance, and the precision of acting only when the moment aligned perfectly. Silence disarms your adversaries, coaxing them to unveil their vulnerabilities, granting you mastery without ever drawing a weapon. Third, family transcends the ties of blood. My father and sister carried my surname, yet they remained blind to my essence. True kinship blossomed through my grandfather's unwavering faith, Sarah's relentless advocacy, and David's understated support. Family is defined by those who remain steadfast when the world grows cold, who affirm your value when self-doubt whispers loudest. Blood may fracture under pressure. It's the bonds of loyalty and mutual recognition that weave an unbreakable fabric of belonging. Fourth, legacy is a monument you erect. My grandfather bestowed upon me more than a fortune. He entrusted me with a mission. The Steele Foundation and Forward Haven are not mere structures. They are testaments to the possibility of crafting something enduring from the embers of destruction. An inheritance may slip away like sand, but a legacy shaped by your own labor, molded by your deepest values, stands as an impregnable fortress. Construct what holds meaning, laying each stone with purpose, and it will endure as a beacon long after your journey ends. Finally, your strength exceeds their estimation. They endeavored to obliterate me, labeling me deceased, pilfering my identity, reducing my future to ashes. Yet, my resolve remained inviolate. Each stride I took, from the courtroom's decisive gavel to welcoming our inaugural client, served as a testament. Your power lies not in what others bestow, but in what you fiercely protect. They can consign paper to flames, but they cannot extinguish the fire that burns within you. If my journey ignites an ember within your soul, if you've ever clawed your way up from your own ruins, please press that like button, share this video far and wide, and subscribe to the channel. Share your narrative in the comments. Recount the instant you rose, unyielding and whole. Together, we form an unbreakable alliance, and I am eager to discover how you've sculpted your own indelible legacy.